Hello everyone, my name is Emma Belknap and I'm a research assistant for the Book of Mormon Art Catalog. Today we're joined by Dr. David James Gonzalez. David James Gonzalez is a native of Southern California currently residing in Provo, Utah with his wife and 4 children. He is a professor of history at Brigham Young University and currently serves as the Bishop of the Franklin II Native American Ward. Dr. Gonzalez, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And today we'll be talking about the passage in Come Follow Me, 3 Nephi 20 through 26. At this point in time in the Book of Mormon, Christ is in the land bountiful, and he covers a lot of topics here. He talks about the coming forth of the Book of Mormon, the gathering of Israel, and the second coming. And today, the painting that we'll be talking about specifically refers to 3 Nephi 23, in which Christ is talking to the disciples there, and he's talking about the records and what he would like to have included in them. And now it came to pass that when Jesus had said these words, he said unto them again, after he had expounded all the scriptures unto them which they had received, he said unto them, Behold, other scriptures I would that ye should write, that ye have not. And it came to pass that he said unto Nephi, Bring forth the record which ye have kept. And that is the passage that we can see depicted here in this beautiful painting by Jorge Coco Santangelo. It's called Jesu Cristo Revise las Planchas. It was created in 2008, and it's a painting. Well, I guess we'll just jump right into it. My first question for you, Dr. Gonzalez, is how does this artwork interpret this scripture that I just read?
Yes, I think, quite literally, it refers directly to Jesus first reviewing their scriptures. So he asked them to bring the record. They bring it to him, and then he looks like he's studying, right? He looks like he's looking for something in this one, right? He already knows, perhaps, right, that they didn't record what he was going to ask them about. But a lot of my mind was thinking to, just how much, the artist, how much Jorge Coco, depicts, I think, Jesus's intention and close focus on the scriptures, on the records themselves. And that really got me thinking a lot too, well, why are they so important? I mean, in that, like, this is Jesus Christ.
Yes.
You would think his words supersede scripture, but actually, right, his words are the scripture.
Yes.
Right? And so a lot of my mind was thinking on some of those things. But
yeah, I think that's a great reference to the beginning of John, right? The Word was with God, and the Word was God. And that's fascinating that that interaction between him being scripture, but then also just searching so intently for what he's looking for. Mm-hmm. I think that is maybe a great attestation to the fact as well of how important scriptures should be in our lives if they're this important in his.
Certainly.
Yeah.
I think I was thinking of some of those things, again, about the importance of scriptures and what do they teach and why is he referring to them. I think in how he's referring to the scriptures and teaching from them in chapters 20 through 26, it includes him both quoting scriptures, quoting prophets, right? So he quotes Isaiah.
Yeah.
I believe in chapters, is it 21 and 22?
I think so,
right?
Yeah.
Which is interesting because Nephi had done that 600 years earlier.
Yes.
And so he's kind of pointing back to a record that they did already have and prophecies that were shared with them, referring to the gathering of Israel. But then he provides them with new ones. I mean, in chapters 24 and 25, I believe he tells them that he was going to give them new scriptures, and he's giving them chapters 3 and 4 of Malachi, which refer to his second coming, I believe.
And something that you just touched on that I love from the scriptures as a whole is how often it feels like things are repeated. The repetition of Isaiah throughout the Book of Mormon.
Right.
And it just tells me these things are important, but also the fact of God's words aren't necessarily changing.
Right.
It's that I need to actually be paying attention to them so that they don't need to be repeated. Yeah,
that makes me think of the comfort that I get from the consistency that I see in the scriptures. And Christ was consistent in that throughout both his ministry throughout the Holy Land, right? But then also when he comes to the New World, the whole time he's teaching the scriptures.
Yes.
He's quoting prophets. He's showing that he's a fulfillment of prophecy. He's showing with Samuel the Lamanite, it's almost like, well, I told you this was going to happen, and it happened, and you didn't record it, right? But again, how much of that was a rebuke or not, but I think it again illustrates how important it was for him to show that the prophets knew. I told, the prophets that this was going to happen, and it did in fact happen. And in a way, it's just that, right? So you can trust me, you can believe me.
Yes.
So that, that consistency that comes from his message, there's a continuity that comes from the message. God is the same, right? He's not changing.
Yes.
His teachings are the same, right? And so the teachings he gave, again, in the old world are the same as those that he gives in the new world.
Yes. And something that I was thinking about as I was thinking about the words that he gave them here and what he was talking about is how we're still receiving that same message today, about how prophets are still telling us, record things, write things down, journal. It's just interesting. That message has been the same with the Nephites here, and it's the same for us today, that consistency, as you were talking about.
I think also in 26, he tells them that there's, we're told by Mormon, right, that there's so much that could have been recorded that he couldn't, right, and that even Christ said, there's other scriptures I have that I want you to have, right, and there's other records, but withhold this, right, for now, and then if we are faithful, right, since this record was meant for us, if we're faithful, to these records, if we value them and learn from them, then more scripture will be given to us. And that is in fact what we have with living prophets, right? I'm always waiting for, right, when that unsealed portion of the Book of Mormon is going to come about.
Me too, absolutely.
Can we get this portion of the plates that's referred to? But yet we have prophets that are continuously giving us additional scripture, additional teachings, and those, as we put them, in line with what we're taught from the Book of Mormon or other scriptures, they're all consistent.
Yeah, and I think that's a great tie-in back to the scripture in Samuel the Lamanite, as you were talking about, how maybe they didn't view it as scripture. They just thought like, oh, this is a prophet of our time. This isn't scripture. This is just this guy on a wall. And how sometimes I think I have the tendency to do the same, where I'm like, oh, that's not scripture. It's just President Nelson up there.
Right. Yeah. No. That's a neat thought. And yes, how much we can discount something in the present, in the moment of it, and not realize how significant it was later on.
Yeah. And can you imagine if Christ hadn't come, he hadn't given them these commandments and told them the words of Samuel the Lamanite need to be in this record? Not necessarily that our practice would be different, but I think my understanding of the gospel would be slightly different, and we wouldn't have that miraculous story of bravery and of faithfulness. So, yeah, what a blessing that they followed through.
Certainly.
And I think that's a kind of good segue into the next question is, we've talked about the idea behind this painting, what's being depicted here. What do you feel like makes this artwork unique, and what strikes you as you're looking at it?
Yeah, for me, and definitely not being a scholar of LDS art or theology, my expertise is in way different fields, but I was more looking at this picture as it kind of made a personal impact on me. Growing up in the 80s and 90s, a lot of the artwork that I saw, Book of Mormon artwork, was of kind of like the Freiburg style stuff, right?
Yes.
They were included in the Book of Mormon pages, and I liked those. I didn't really ever have much to compare it to.
Yeah.
I think in the last few decades, I've seen an explosion, right, of Book of Mormon art, and particularly those that try to be perhaps a bit more representative, of the people, of the place, of the time. So we see Mesoamerican culture, a much more, I think, intentional effort to represent Mesoamerican culture and people, which is something, as I've always read the Book of Mormon, I've tried to imagine what did it look like, right? And so I appreciate that effort, and I appreciate Jorge Coco's work for that reason, among many others.
And I think that that especially comes from the fact that Jorge Coco is from Argentina, and I love that he is really representing, I think, again, what you said, what I also believe is that this is what the Book of Mormon looks like. This is what these events actually look like. Something that I notice as well is the fact that there's those stela in the background that looks like there's stepped pyramids. There's a man who's wearing ear flares, and those are all hallmarks of Mesoamerican cultures, of the Mesoamerican archaeology that's been done on different cultures there, and it's just really lovely that he's incorporating these things and thinking about what would this actually look like. Yeah,
I can only imagine that that stemmed from a personal desire.
Yeah.
To see work that was more representative and consistent, perhaps,
Yes.
of what he was exposed to
Yes.
growing up. I mean, we see that's a commonality in
Mm-hmm.
in a lot, not just in art, but even in history. As a professor of history, I tell my students all the time, history is a collection of the stories that we tell ourselves to give ourselves a sense of identity. And I think that's a quote from Mark Twain. In some way, I'm paraphrasing Mark Twain there. But I see that, I think, in art, and I see that as something that's legitimate. I mean, in many ways, we're all kind of guessing, right? We're trying to get as close to the truth as we can.
Yes.
And I see this as an effort to do that.
Yes. But I also, I love that art is trending that way right now. Looking through the Book of Mormon art catalog and working on it, that's been one of my favorite things, is seeing artists grapple with what would this actually have looked like. And not to bag on the Freeburg paintings that you grew up with, but that was perhaps not how that looked.
Right.
And I love that we're trying to figure that out, and to also just make Book of Mormon art more inclusive. I think everyone should be able to see themselves in the stories that they're hearing and the stories that they love. So
certainly, I mean, we're taught that with the scriptures, right? We're supposed to liken them unto ourselves.
Yes.
And so not to necessarily liken them to another people, but we're supposed to see ourselves in them, right? Apply the prophecies, the teachings to us and what we're dealing with, and so certainly.
Yes. All right, well, last question before we wrap up. I think we touched on this a little bit already, but can you share your personal reaction to this artwork and the scriptures associated with it?
Again, I find it, comforting. Again, it would be neat to, I try to imagine what the, 8 or 12-year-old or 16-year-old me would think seeing it, because it's not something that I was exposed to. And again, what it represents or tries to depict, I see it as a honest attempt, to show Christ's, the significance that he places on the scriptures and his call. I mean, repeatedly throughout these chapters, we're told, search the scriptures diligently. Right? We're taught that, particularly in chapters 23 and 26, that Christ expounds the scriptures, right? We should both study them, we should be able to expound them and teach them and testify of them. In that, Christ is a model. He's a model of everything that we should do with the scriptures. So both the value that he placed on them and amongst the Nephites, I think, are depicted here.
Yeah, lovely. Well, thank you so much for being with us again.
Of course.
It was amazing to hear your insights and to get to see this artwork in a new way and through your own eyes. So thank you so much, and thank you again for joining us this week. We hope that this is informative to your Come Follow Me studies, and that you'll be able to continue to use the catalog to learn more about the scriptures that you're studying and the scriptures that you love.